You ever walk into a place that used to feel like home, only to find it's become nothing but drywall and echoes? That was my apartment the night she left. No warning, no tears, just a note on the kitchen counter, written in that sharp, upright script of hers. I need space to rediscover myself. Don't call. I'll reach out when I'm ready. I read it 3 times. It still didn't make sense. Her coat was gone from the rack. The closet felt gutted. Her favorite mug, the chipped blue ceramic one she used every morning, gone. I opened the bathroom drawer and found nothing but the hollow rattle of loose cotton balls. Even the scent of her shampoo was already fading, like she'd taken the air with her too. We'd argued before, sure, but this wasn't some dramatic fight. We weren't throwing plates or screaming obscenities. It was slow, quiet, like a fire you don't notice until the smoke has already thickened your lungs. One day we were watching Netflix, her feet on my lap, and the next, well, this. I stood there, staring at that empty toothbrush holder, wondering if I was supposed to feel anger. But all I felt was confusion and silence. Silence has a weight to it when it replaces someone's laughter. The first few nights, I thought maybe she was bluffing. Maybe it was some dramatic statement, a reset button. I didn't text, didn't call, gave her that space she wanted. I tried to act mature, like a good husband who respects her growth. But by day 4, I found myself eating cold Chinese straight from the fridge, sitting on the floor like a squatter in my own home. The apartment had changed. It wasn't the furniture, that all stayed. But the energy was different. The bed felt bigger, but not in a good way. Just colder. Her side of the mattress didn't even hold the faint imprint of her body anymore. I'd lay my hand where her hip would rest, trying to recall the warmth that used to linger long after she got up. Even the goddamn cat didn't stick around. She took Luna with her, like some final twist of the knife. And I just stayed behind, surrounded by the things we built together. The curtains she insisted on, even though I hated them. The spice rack she alphabetized. The wine glasses we never used but refused to donate. I stared at all of it like I was in a museum exhibit about a life I used to live. Then came the realization. I didn't even know what she was rediscovering. Herself? Was that something I buried? Did I dim her light? Was I the thing she needed to escape from? Those questions came every night around 2 a.m. They whispered through the darkness, taunting me. And still, no call, no message, just silence. I tried to pretend I was fine, kept up appearances, went to work, made small talk in the elevator, laughed at dumb jokes in meetings. But the moment I stepped into the apartment each evening, the mask cracked. No perfume wafting from the hallway. No soft hum of her singing off-key in the kitchen. No keys tossed on the counter with that signature metallic jingle. Just that goddamn note, still sitting there, like a curse etched in ink. Sometimes I talked out loud, just to feel less alone. I'd say things like, "You know the sink's leaking again," or, "I finally bought oat milk like you asked." Like she might appear around the corner, roll her eyes, and tell me I was doing it wrong. She never did. On the 7th night, I tried to sleep on her side of the bed. It felt like cheating. Worse, it felt like she could walk in at any moment and accuse me of moving on too fast. I rolled back to my side, wide-eyed until sunrise. The worst part? She left with no villain to point to. No affair. No blowout fight. No addiction or betrayal or abuse. Just space. Like I was oxygen she had breathed too long. Like she needed to inhale something new. And I was stale air. I kept the apartment clean, mostly out of denial. If she walked back through the door, I didn't want her to see the mess and decide I'd fallen apart. I wanted to look balanced, unbothered, like someone worth rediscovering, if she ever bothered to look back. But I wasn't okay. Every creak of the floor made me think she was coming home. Every buzz from my phone made my heart spike. Every goddamn dream was a rerun of mornings we made coffee in our underwear, or nights she climbed on top of me like I was the only man who ever mattered. I missed her. Her body, yes. But more than that, I missed the ritual of us. The way she'd tease me for how I folded towels. The way she'd bite her lip when she was reading something sad. The way she'd press her foot against mine under the covers, even when she was mad. I missed all of it. And now, it was just me. Me in this echo chamber of memories dressed up as an apartment. The same 4 walls that once held love, now holding nothing but questions and shadows. So I poured myself another drink and stared at the door, half hoping it would open, half hoping it wouldn't. It was the 1st of the month, and I almost forgot. Almost. The reminder came not as an alert on my phone or a calendar ping, but as a quiet knock at the door. Not hurried, not soft, just 3 deliberate raps. The kind that felt like it belonged to someone who didn't need to knock twice. I opened the door, and there she was, Miss Harper. My landlady. Early 50s, slim, with that poised posture of a woman who'd stopped apologizing for taking up space. She wore her usual black coat, her silver-streaked hair pulled back in a practical twist. In her hands, a worn leather ledger, probably older than me. "Afternoon," she said, eyes scanning me the way a mother scans a child who says he's fine but looks anything but. I nodded and stepped aside. "Come in." She hesitated. Normally, she'd just take the envelope, mark it down, and be gone within 2 minutes. Efficient. Predictable. But this time, she stood still, eyes narrowing ever so slightly. "I'm a little early," she said, stepping in at last. "Hope you don't mind." "It's fine," I murmured. The apartment felt colder than usual, even though I hadn't touched the thermostat. Ms. Harper's gaze slid across the room, the untouched dishes in the sink, the vacuum lines still etched in the carpet from 3 days ago, the stack of takeout containers I hadn't thrown out yet. Nothing messy, just lifeless. She sniffed once, not condescending, just thoughtful. "Your wife not home." The word wife hit like a stray elbow to the ribs. I offered a thin smile. "She's, taking some time for herself." Ms. Harper arched an eyebrow but didn't comment. She'd been managing the building for over 20 years. She'd seen breakups, breakdowns, babies, deaths, all playing out behind these drywall walls. I imagined nothing surprised her anymore. I handed her the envelope. "Rent's in there. Full amount." She took it, slid it into her ledger without opening it. But she didn't write anything down. Instead, she kept looking at me, the kind of look that sits on you heavy. "You look like hell," she said matter-of-factly. I blinked. "Thanks. I mean it kindly," she added, a dry smile teasing her lips. "You've lost weight. Your eyes look like you haven't slept. And you reek of," she sniffed the air, "regret, mostly. With a hint of bourbon." "Sounds like I'm right on schedule," I muttered, walking toward the kitchen to avoid her gaze. I heard the click of her heels as she followed. "I don't usually pry." "You're literally prying." She gave a light chuckle. Maybe I'm just nosy. Or maybe I remember what it's like to live in a place that feels like a mausoleum. That stopped me. I turned, leaning against the counter. "Mausoleum?" She shrugged. "A home can die, too, you know. All the things you built with someone, little routines, inside jokes, shared silences, they don't vanish when the person does. They just haunt the place." I didn't answer. There was nothing to say. She was right. Every damn corner of this place was haunted. Miss Harper leaned her ledger on the counter, but made no move to write. Instead, she looked at me again, softer this time. "How long's it been?" "A little over a week," I said. She left a note. Said she needed to find herself. Miss Harper rolled her eyes. "Ah, the dreaded self-rediscovery tour." I cracked a faint smile. "You sound like you've heard that before." She tapped her fingers on the ledger. "Heard it?" I said it once. When I was 34. Left my husband, packed a duffel bag, told him I needed time. A year later, I realized all I discovered was how lonely hotel rooms feel when no one texts to check in. "You came back." I tried. She looked down for a moment. But by then, he was done waiting. I let the silence stretch. There was something grounding about it. Her presence didn't feel intrusive anymore, more like an old tree leaning over a storm-beaten house, offering shade. Miss Harper cleared her throat and straightened. "Anyway, I'm not here to unload. Just checking on you." I nodded, voice low. "I appreciate it." She looked around again, then set the ledger aside and opened a small bag I hadn't noticed she was carrying. From it, she pulled out a tin. "Banana bread. Made it this morning." I raised an eyebrow. "Don't flatter yourself," she said dryly. "I bake every Saturday. Usually give the extra to the tenants who aren't assholes." "Well, I'm honored." She smirked and placed the tin on the counter. "Keep the place warm. Open a window once in a while. And for God's sake, eat something that didn't come in a plastic container." As she turned to leave, I followed her to the door. Something stopped me, a flicker of need, maybe. "You ever forget how it used to feel?" I asked. She paused with her hand on the doorknob. "Every day," she said. "But then it fades. The edge is dull. One day you wake up and realize you didn't think about them until noon. And then the memory stops owning you." She opened the door. Until then, eat the damn bread. The door clicked shut behind her. I stood there, staring at the tin. For the first time in over a week, something in the apartment didn't feel dead. It felt, faintly, quietly, like care. And just for a moment, the silence didn't echo so loudly. The next time she knocked, it was raining. Not a dramatic downpour, just a steady gray drizzle that had been clinging to the windows all day, as if the sky couldn't quite decide whether to cry or just sulk. I hadn't expected her again so soon. It wasn't rent day. I hadn't reported any maintenance issues. There was no notice. Just another 3 soft raps on the door. I opened it, and there was MS. Harper again. The same black coat darkened by the rain, but no umbrella this time. A scarf clung damply around her neck. Her eyes met mine with a mixture of politeness and something else, something unreadable. She held up a small plastic container. Soup, she said simply. I blinked. Soup? You mentioned you hadn't been eating much. I don't think I said that. You didn't have to. She pushed the container into my hands and stepped inside uninvited. Mind if I sit? I stepped aside, still holding the soup, half amused and half bewildered. Not at all. She dropped into the chair by the window, where the light was soft and pale from the rain. Her coat was still damp, but she didn't seem to care. I set the soup down on the counter and leaned against the kitchen island, folding my arms. She looked around. You haven't changed anything. I shrugged. Feels weird to move stuff. Like if I rearrange things, it'll make it real. It is real. I know, I said. But letting the furniture know feels like betrayal. That made her chuckle. God, you sound like me 20 years ago. When my husband left, I didn't move his boots from the closet for months. Just let them sit there like he was coming back from a hike or something. Did he? No, she said. He moved to Santa Fe, married a potter. Wears linen shirts now. Calls himself spiritually fluid. I laughed harder than I expected. It surprised both of us. Her smile softened. See? That's better. You've been stuck in silence too long. I studied her for a moment. Why are you really here? I told you. Soup. No, seriously. Ms. Harper tapped her fingers on the arm of the chair. Truth? I saw something in your eyes last time. Something I've seen before in my mirror. You needed someone to talk to. You just didn't know how to ask. I didn't answer right away. The clock on the microwave ticked a loud minute past. Yeah, I said finally. I guess I do. She gestured toward the couch. Then sit down. Tell me. I sat across from her. The space between us was quiet, but not awkward. Comfortable. I didn't even know where to start. So I just said the first thing that came to mind. She used to leave her slippers by the bed. Every night. Same spot. And every morning, she'd trip over them. And every morning she'd say, I should stop doing that, and laugh. Miss Harper smiled gently. And now? Now I stare at the empty floor and wonder why the hell I miss tripping hazards. She nodded. It's never the big things. No, it's not. I leaned forward, rubbing my hands together. I keep thinking, maybe I wasn't enough. Or maybe I didn't see it coming because I didn't want to. She didn't leave out of hate. She left out of emptiness. Which is worse? Yeah, I whispered. It is. She was quiet for a moment. Then, can I tell you something? Something I don't usually share? Of course. My ex-husband didn't leave me. I left him. But it wasn't for someone else. It was because I woke up one morning and didn't recognize the life I was living. It was all the things I'd said I wanted, but none of it felt like mine. And did that change? She looked out the rain-fogged window. Eventually. But not in the way I thought. I didn't find some new version of myself. I just realized I missed having someone who knew me. Someone who could finish my sentences and call me on my bullshit. You only get that kind of bond once or twice in life. If you're lucky. I let that settle in. She stood, stretching her arms. I should go? Don't want to overstay. You didn't. She walked to the door, paused. You know, next time I come by, maybe we just sit and talk. No soup. No rent. No charity. I'd like that. Her lips curled in the faintest smile. Good. Then it's a date. I watched her walk down the hallway, her steps sure and deliberate. As I closed the door behind her, something in the apartment felt altered. Not fixed. Not full. But shifted. The silence still hung around me, but it wasn't quite so heavy. And for the first time in days, I didn't dread the night. The knock was louder this time. Not urgent. Not rude. Just confident. I was in sweats, bare feet on the hardwood, a beer in one hand, half watching reruns of a show I didn't even like. It was almost 7 p.m. on a Tuesday. I hadn't showered. The apartment smelled faintly of takeout and stale coffee. I opened the door and froze. Miss Harper stood there again, but this time with two bulging brown paper bags in her arms. "What's that?" I asked, glancing past her to the hallway. "Groceries," she said, brushing past me and stepping inside like she'd done it 100 times before. "You look like you've been living on sodium and sadness." No offense. She dropped the bags on the counter. "But your color's off and your recycling bin looks like a graveyard for pad thai containers." I tried to smile, but mostly I just stood there while she unpacked. Eggs, fresh herbs, chicken thighs, garlic, pasta, tomatoes, lemons. Real food. She paused and looked over her shoulder. "You do have a functioning stove, don't you?" "Technically, yes." "Good. You're cooking with me tonight." "Wait, what?" She turned, one hand on her hip. "Do you have plans?" I hesitated. "Netflix and existential dread?" She smirked. "Great. Push that to tomorrow. We're cooking." It should have felt weird. My landlady in my kitchen, pulling out produce and spices like she'd lived here for years. But it didn't. It felt grounding, like someone had cracked a window in a sealed room. I moved beside her. "Okay, what are we making?" "Lemon garlic chicken with roasted potatoes. Maybe a salad if I'm feeling wild." "Wild salad." I'm intrigued. She handed me a cutting board and a knife. "Chop the parsley. Coarsely. None of that micro-dicing crap." I obeyed, half amused, half bewildered. As we worked, something unspoken settled between us. A rhythm. The kitchen filled with the sizzle of olive oil, the scent of garlic hitting a hot pan, the occasional clatter of utensils. It was quiet, but not empty. "Where'd you learn to cook?" I asked. "Trial and error. My mom died when I was young. Dad didn't know how to boil water. If I wanted something edible, I had to figure it out." I looked at her, surprised. She'd never mentioned family before. "Was he a good dad?" I asked. She shrugged. "He tried. He was better with silence than with feelings. I guess that's why I ended up marrying someone who did the same." "You think we all do that? Pick familiar pain?" Her eyes met mine, steady. "Sometimes. But sometimes we get lucky and recognize it before it's too late." The oven beeped. She moved to it gracefully, like she belonged in the space. I watched her pull the tray out, steam rising up in soft clouds. "You always barge into tenants' lives like this?" I asked, half joking. She looked at me, eyebrow raised. "Only the ones who look like they haven't had a real meal or a real conversation in weeks." The corner of my mouth twitched. "Then I guess I'm special." Painfully, she deadpanned. We sat down at the tiny kitchen table, the one my wife and I used to share dinner over, or coffee, or sometimes nothing at all when the silence between us started creeping in. But tonight it felt different. I poured us each a glass of wine. She sipped slowly, her eyes scanning the table like she was cataloging every detail. "Can I ask you something?" she said suddenly. "Of course." "When she left, did she take all of herself? Or just the parts she thought you couldn't carry?" The question hit hard. I set my glass down. "I don't know," I admitted. "I think she thought she was doing something brave. Like by leaving, she was sparing both of us. But it felt more like she gave up." Miss Harper nodded. "That's the problem with brave people. They often confuse abandonment with courage." "And what do you confuse?" She paused. "Control. I confuse control with safety. That's why I don't let people in. Why I knock like a landlord instead of asking like a friend." I looked at her, really looked at her, and noticed something shift in the air between us. There was vulnerability there, soft and quiet. "Do you want to stay for another glass?" I asked, my voice lower than before. Her lips parted slightly, and for a moment, something sparked. Unspoken, not acted upon, but definitely felt. A pulse under the quiet. She shook her head gently. "Not tonight." "Why not?" "Because you're not ready. And because if I stay, this stops being about food." I didn't know what to say. My heart thudded louder than I wanted it to. She stood, taking her coat off the hook. "Same time next week?" she asked. I nodded, and then she was gone. But the kitchen smelled like lemon and garlic and something that hadn't lived there in weeks. Hope. It became a thing. Not that either of us said it out loud. But it happened. First once a week, then twice. Then casually, like it had always been that way. Miss Harper would knock. Sometimes with groceries, sometimes with leftovers, sometimes with nothing at all but a look that said, "You need something more than silence tonight." And every time, I let her in. We never set a time. We didn't plan menus. Some nights we cooked from scratch. Other times we warmed soup or just shared wine and bread while the city lights spilled shadows across the walls. It should have felt strange, my landlady sitting barefoot on my couch, laughing over a glass of Merlot while reruns played in the background. But it didn't. It felt like a tether, a thin line to reality I didn't know I needed. And somewhere along the way, I stopped counting how many days it had been since my wife left. I started counting how many meals Ms. Harper and I had shared. There was one night, a Friday. She brought over a bottle of Spanish Red and a tray of roasted vegetables wrapped in foil. I had actually cooked something for once, a rough attempt at risotto that I'd nearly ruined but saved with too much butter. She pretended to love it. "That's the trick," she said, swirling her wine. "Any dish can be saved with an irresponsible amount of dairy." We sat close, thighs brushing under the table, and I felt it again, that quiet hum between us. The kind of electricity that didn't scream or spark, but simmered. Low, steady, undeniable. I watched the way she tucked her hair behind her ear, the way her fingers played with the stem of her glass. Her blouse dipped slightly at the collarbone, revealing the faint trace of a freckle I hadn't noticed before. And for a heartbeat, I wasn't just grateful she was here. I was attracted to her. And she knew. I saw it in the way her eyes flicked toward me, lingering just a second too long. In the way her lips curled, not into a smile, but something softer, something like invitation. But she said nothing. And neither did I. Not yet. Instead, we cleaned up like we always did, quietly, comfortably. She dried, I washed. We moved around each other with the practiced rhythm of people who had done this dozens of times. Like a couple. But not. After the dishes, we settled on the couch. She sat beside me, one knee pulled up, facing me. Her wine glass dangled from her hand, the red liquid catching the dim light. She looked at me for a long moment, then tilted her head. "You're smiling more," she said. "Am I?" "Yeah. Less ghost. More man." I nodded. "You have that effect." She arched an eyebrow. "Oh, so I'm a resurrection now." Something like that. Silence fell again, but it was warm, not awkward. The kind of silence you slip into, not the kind you run from. Outside, rain drizzled down the windows. She looked toward it and sighed. "I used to love nights like this," she said. "When I was married, we'd play music, slow jazz, cook together, drink too much wine, make love on the kitchen floor." There it was. The shift. That word, love, dropped into the space between us like a stone in still water. Not crude, not flippant, just honest. "You miss him?" I asked softly. She took a long sip of wine, then shook her head. "I miss who we were before life got in the way. Before we became roommates with rings on our fingers." I understood that all too well. I glanced toward her, unsure of the line I was walking. "Do you ever regret leaving?" She looked at me then, eyes unreadable. "Only when I think no one will ever know me like he did." And then I remember how lonely it was to be known and still be forgotten. That hit deep. I looked down, swirling my own glass, thinking about how many nights I lay beside someone who had already begun to drift away. How many times I convinced myself the problem was just stress or routine, not the slow crumbling of intimacy. We said nothing for a while. Then she spoke, her voice softer. "I should go." "You don't have to." Her eyes met mine. "I know." But she stood anyway, gathering her scarf, her coat. I followed her to the door, every step feeling like a question I couldn't ask. She turned to face me, hand on the knob. "Same time next week?" I asked, more hopeful than I meant to sound. She smiled, not her usual smirk, not a tease. A real smile. "Maybe sooner," she said. And then she was gone, leaving behind the scent of rosemary, red wine, and something I hadn't felt in months. Anticipation. It was a Wednesday when everything almost changed. She hadn't knocked, just texted. "Got wine. Got time. You cooking?" I stared at the message longer than I should have before typing back. "Only if you don't mind frozen pizza and charm." Her reply came instantly. "I'll bring the salad. You bring the charm." By the time she arrived, I'd shoved the pizza into the oven and put on a shirt that didn't smell like solitude. She walked in wearing dark jeans and a navy sweater that hugged her waist in a way that made me forget how to breathe for half a second. Her hair was down. Simple. Effortless. Dangerous. We ate at the kitchen island, laughing, teasing, trading little stories like old friends who never ran out of things to say. The wine flowed, maybe too freely, but neither of us stopped pouring. By the time we made it to the couch, the bottle was nearly empty, and the air between us felt dense, thicker than usual, heavier. We sat closer than we had before. Her thigh brushed mine. Not an accident. I didn't move. Neither did she. On the screen, a movie played, but neither of us was watching. I could smell the hint of something floral on her skin. It wasn't perfume. It was softer, more intimate, like the scent that lingers after a shower. Clean. Inviting. I caught myself watching the curve of her neck, the way she tilted her head back when she laughed, the little crinkle at the corner of her eyes when she smiled at something I said. And then it happened. She reached for the wine glass and her hand brushed mine. Not a graze. Not one of those accidental, split-second contacts. No. This lingered. Her fingers slid lightly against the back of my hand. And stayed. I didn't move. Couldn't. Her eyes met mine. Quiet. Steady. Searching. I shouldn't be here this much, she said softly, barely above a whisper. I don't want you anywhere else. I replied before thinking. She didn't flinch, but her breath caught, just slightly. Her fingers slipped over mine again, and for a moment, I thought she'd pull away. She didn't. Instead, she turned toward me, slowly, her knees brushing against mine. Her free hand rested lightly on my arm. Her voice, when she spoke again, was quieter. You're not over her. I know, I said, but I don't feel alone when you're here. Her eyes dropped to my lips for a fraction of a second, barely perceptible, but unmistakable. That single look lit a fuse I'd been holding for weeks. I leaned in. Just enough. Her breath hitched. My heart pounded against my ribs. We hovered there, lips not quite touching, breaths mingling, the electricity between us sharp enough to cut skin. She smelled like wine and rosemary and the slightest trace of something sweet I couldn't place. My hand slid to her waist, gently. Her eyes fluttered half-closed. And then, I pulled back. The guilt hit like a punch to the chest. I can't, I whispered. She stayed still, lips parted, her face unreadable. I'm sorry, I added, barely able to meet her gaze. She didn't speak at first, just sat there, breathing slowly, as if trying to steady something inside herself. Finally, she reached down, took my hand gently in hers, and squeezed. You don't have to be strong all the time, she said. Then she stood, gathered her coat, and walked to the door. No anger, no dramatics, just a quiet, deliberate retreat. She paused with her hand on the knob. You didn't hurt me, she said. But don't wait too long figuring out what you want, because I'm not going to stand still forever. And then she was gone. The silence that followed wasn't the same as the one from the night my wife left. This one wasn't hollow. It was full of tension, of restraint, of something waiting just beyond the edge of permission. I sat there for a long time, her scent still clinging to the couch cushions, my heartbeat still racing. I hadn't kissed her, but I'd thought about it. I still was. And I knew that next time, I might not pull away. The silence after that night didn't feel like the others. It wasn't empty, it was loud. Every object in the apartment seemed to hum with the words we hadn't said. The air held on to her perfume for days, and my body still remembered the warmth of her fingers resting on my hand, that charged space between us, where a kiss nearly happened, but hadn't. I told myself it was restraint, but it felt more like cowardice. 3 days passed without a knock, a text, or the familiar tap of her heels in the hallway. Each evening, I found myself watching the door. Not actively, not obviously, just aware, expectant. I hadn't realized how quickly her presence had become a rhythm in my life, and how hollow the days felt without it. By the 4th night, I cracked. I sent a message. I need to talk. About everything. If you're willing. She replied 10 minutes later. I'll come by after 9. 9 felt like midnight. I paced the apartment more times than I want to admit. Straightened the cushions. Changed shirts twice. Poured a drink, then dumped it out. My nerves were wired tight. Not from guilt anymore, but from something else. Fear. Hope. When she finally knocked, I opened the door before the second knock could land. She looked calm, collected, dressed in charcoal slacks and a soft maroon blouse. No wine, no groceries, just her. Hi, I said, stepping aside. Hi. She entered without hesitation but didn't sit. She stood near the window, arms crossed, watching the rain trace lines across the glass. I didn't want to push you, she said. But I'm not going to lie. I thought about not replying. Because of the other night? She nodded. Because I felt something real. And I didn't know if you felt it too. Or if I was just convenient. I winced. You're not. God, you're not. She turned to face me. Then say what you need to say. I took a deep breath. I'm lost. She gave a short, bitter laugh. Yeah, that much is obvious. I mean it, I said. I'm stuck between this woman who walked out on me like I was an old pair of shoes, and this other woman who somehow saw me. Really saw me. When I was barely holding myself together. Her eyes softened, but she didn't speak. I'm lonely, I went on. Not just because she left, but because I didn't even realize how alone I was while she was still here. You started showing up, and for the first time in months, I felt like a person again. Still, she stayed quiet. And that night, I added, voice low, when I almost kissed you, I wanted to. I really wanted to. But something held me back. Maybe guilt. Maybe fear. Maybe the part of me that's terrified I'll mess up something good again. Finally, she stepped closer. I'm not asking you to declare love, she said gently. I'm not even asking for promises. I just wanted to know if I meant something. If I was just filling space until your wife came back. I stepped forward too. You mean something. More than I can explain. But I need you to understand. I'm still figuring myself out. Who I am without her. Without the marriage. Without the resentment. She nodded slowly. That's fair. A pause stretched between us. Long, but not cold. Then she reached into her coat pocket and pulled out something small. A photo. A man with his arm around her. Younger version of her. Happier. My ex, she said. We were married 11 years. And for most of it, I thought we were fine. Until one day, I realized we hadn't touched in almost 6 months. Hadn't had a real conversation in a year. We didn't fight. We didn't kiss. We just disappeared into the routine. I studied the photo. Her smile was different then, wider, but emptier. I promised myself the next time I felt something real, she continued, I wouldn't run from it. Even if it wasn't perfect. Even if it scared me. I looked at her. And do you feel something real now? Yes, she said. Without hesitation. Without flinching. My chest tightened. I do too. She stepped closer, close enough that I could feel the warmth of her body. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Then let's stop pretending this is just comfort. Let's stop pretending this is casual. The space between us dissolved. My hand found her waist, and hers slid up my chest, fingers curling gently against my shirt. Our foreheads touched. Breath mingled. No kiss. Not yet. But we were closer than we'd ever allowed ourselves to be. And I realized something in that moment. This wasn't a replacement. It wasn't a rebound. This was the first time in months I'd felt like I could finally breathe without someone else defining my worth. We stood like that for what felt like hours, skin to skin, heart to heart, truths laid bare in the quiet. She eventually pulled back just enough to whisper, I'm not going anywhere. But I need to know you're not either. I nodded, my voice low. I'm here. I'm choosing this. Slowly, maybe. Cautiously. But honestly. She smiled, soft, real, with just a hint of sadness around the edges. That's all I needed to hear. And for the first time since my wife walked out of this apartment, I didn't feel abandoned. I felt chosen. The kiss didn't happen the night of the confession. It happened the night after. I was in the kitchen again, our new ritual, making something close to a pasta dish, chopping garlic too aggressively because I couldn't stop replaying her voice in my head. I'm not going anywhere. But I need to know you're not either. I didn't want to be anywhere else. Not anymore. When she knocked, I opened the door faster than I should have. She was standing there, no coat, no bag, just a cardigan wrapped tight around her waist, eyes soft. She looked like someone who'd made up her mind. Hi, she said. Hey. She stepped in without hesitation and closed the door behind her. We didn't say anything for a moment. The air between us had changed. Thicker, denser. The kind of silence that lives right before thunder cracks the sky. I gestured toward the kitchen. Dinner's almost. She stepped forward. My words died on my tongue. Her hand reached up, fingers brushing my jaw, and she kissed me. No warning. No hesitation. Just a kiss that silenced the entire apartment. It was soft at first. Exploratory. A gentle meeting of lips long overdue. But then my hands found her waist, and hers slid up into my hair, and the heat we'd been swallowing for weeks surged forward like it had been caged too long. She tasted like wine and resolve. And I kissed her like a man who'd forgotten what connection felt like. We stumbled to the couch, still kissing, our hands fumbling but deliberate. Her cardigan slipped from her shoulders, revealing a thin, sleeveless top that clung to her in all the ways that made my breath catch. I paused just long enough to look at her, searching her eyes for any sign of regret. There was none. Still sure, I asked, my voice hoarse. She nodded once. I've never been more. When our mouths met again, the kiss deepened, no longer gentle. Her fingers tugged at the hem of my shirt, sliding underneath, her palms flat against my chest. I groaned into her mouth as I pulled her closer, guiding her down onto the cushions. Her legs tangled with mine, and for the first time in forever, I wasn't thinking about anyone else. Not my wife. Not the past. Just her. The way her body arched toward mine. The way she gasped when I kissed her neck. The way her thighs squeezed around me as our movements grew slower and more intentional. There was no rush. We were discovering, not escaping. Undressing was awkward at first, a button stuck, a laugh shared. But then our bodies pressed skin to skin, and the laughter gave way to something deeper. Her back arched when I ran my fingers down her side. She whispered my name like it was something she'd been holding in for months. I kissed every inch of her I could reach. Her collarbone, her shoulder, the soft dip just beneath her ribcage. And when we finally came together, it wasn't hurried or rough. It was slow, intimate. We moved like we already knew each other, not just bodies, but grief, silence, need. Her nails dug into my back. My name left her lips again, softer this time, almost reverent. And when it was over, when our breathing slowed and the quiet returned, we didn't move right away. She curled against me, her head resting on my chest, her fingers tracing lazy circles over my stomach. My hand slid through her hair as I stared up at the ceiling, trying to remember the last time I'd felt this. "Whole. I wasn't sure you'd let yourself feel this," she said quietly. I didn't think I was allowed. She looked up. By who? By myself. I thought moving on had to be clean. Time-stamped. Sanitized. I exhaled. But you've been here, night after night. You never pushed, but you never backed away either. She leaned in and kissed the center of my chest. Because I saw you before you did. I turned, facing her fully. Her face was bare, not just makeup-free, but unguarded. She looked at me like she wasn't afraid of what I'd do next. Like she trusted me not to disappear. "I don't know where this leads," I said. "You don't have to," she replied. "I'm not asking for forever. Just honesty." "I can give you that," I said. Finally, we laid like that for a long time, legs tangled, warmth shared under a blanket pulled from the back of the couch. Outside, the city kept moving. Cars, voices, life. But in the apartment, time felt suspended. Eventually, she dozed off against my chest. Her breath slow, steady, familiar in a way that made my chest ache. And as I lay there, her body curled around mine. The guilt that had clung to me since the day my wife left began to fade, not erased, but transformed. This wasn't betrayal. It was healing, and I finally let myself believe that I deserved it. It had been 3 weeks since that night on the couch. 3 weeks since the first kiss. Since the first time I touched someone without guilt or grief clawing at the edges of it. Since I stopped calling Ms. Harper by her last name. Now, she was just Claire. And she was here, most nights. Cooking, laughing, wrapped in a blanket with her toes tucked under my leg as we watched bad movies and better sunsets through the apartment window. For the first time in what felt like years, I had something that resembled peace. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It wasn't lust-fueled fantasy. It was just comfort. It was knowing that I'd hear the faint rattle of her keys as she let herself in. The way she always hummed when she opened a bottle of wine. The way she whispered good night, even when she knew I was already half asleep. I didn't expect the call. Not from her. I was folding laundry, still wearing the same t-shirt Claire had tugged off me the night before when my phone buzzed across the counter. Unknown number. But something in my chest tightened. I answered out of reflex. "Hello." A pause. Then her voice, soft, unsure. "Hey, it's me." My mouth went dry. "Emma." Another pause. "Yeah. My wife." The one who'd walked out with a suitcase and 1,000 excuses about needing to rediscover herself. The one I hadn't heard from in nearly 2 months. "I wasn't sure you'd pick up," she said. "Why are you calling?" She let out a breath. "I've been thinking. A lot. About us." I didn't say anything. "I miss you," she said. "And I want to come home." That word, home, hit differently now. It didn't mean what it used to. "I don't think that's a good idea," I said carefully. "I just need to see you." she said quickly. We don't have to figure everything out right away. Let's talk. In person. I don't think there's anything to say. Please. I closed my eyes, jaw tight. Old wounds flaring open, bleeding over everything I'd tried to build with Claire. Fine, I said. Tomorrow morning. The call ended. Claire came in 20 minutes later. I hadn't moved from the counter. She smiled when she saw me, but it faltered. What's wrong? I turned toward her slowly. She called. Claire didn't ask who. She knew. She wants to come back. Claire's arms folded across her chest, her shoulders stiffening. What did you say? I told her we could talk. Just talk. She nodded, slowly. Too slowly. Her face remained unreadable, but her eyes screamed fear. Do you still love her? She asked quietly. I opened my mouth and stopped. That was the thing. I didn't know. The memory of love still existed. But love itself? I wasn't sure it had survived everything she'd done, everything I'd been through. I don't know what I feel, I admitted. But I know what I found with you feels more real than anything we had in that last year. Claire didn't smile. But she was your wife. She's still your wife. For now. That answer didn't seem to help. She sat down at the edge of the couch, fingers picking at the seam of the cushion. Am I just filling the space until she decides you're worth keeping again? No. You're the only reason I even remember who I am. She swallowed. I told you from the start, I wouldn't be your distraction. I'm not someone you forget once your marriage gets convenient again. I sat beside her, close. You're not. You've never been that. Her hands were trembling, just barely. I reached for them. I'm scared, she whispered. So am I. She leaned into me then, slowly. I held her tighter than I meant to, my chest tight with the weight of everything suddenly threatening to unravel. I hated that Emma's voice still had that power, that her sudden reappearance made Claire doubt everything we'd built. I'm not going to let her undo this, I said. I swear to you. I want to believe you. Then stay, I said. Don't give up on this. On me. Claire looked up. Promise me something. Anything. If she walks in here tomorrow, and you even think for a second you still belong with her, you tell me. You don't lie to me. Don't drag this out just because it's comfortable. I promise. She nodded, kissed my cheek softly, and stood. I'm going to go home tonight, she said. Give you space to think. I stood too. You don't have to. I do, she said. Because if we're going to survive this, it has to be honest. She kissed me, slow, lingering, and painful in a way I didn't expect. The kind of kiss that wasn't a goodbye, but wasn't quite a guarantee either. Then she left, and I was alone again. The apartment felt unfamiliar, like I'd been dropped into someone else's life. And maybe I had. The old version of myself, the one Emma had left behind, was still in this place. Still etched into the furniture, the walls, the closet filled with clothes she hadn't taken. I walked to the door, slid the lock into place, and leaned against it, eyes closed. Tomorrow, I would see her again, and I'd finally find out who I really was. By the choice I made. She showed up exactly at 10. I heard the elevator ding, the slow creak of her footsteps down the hall. She still had the key, of course she did, but she didn't use it. Instead, she knocked. Softly. 3 times. The same way Claire used to. I opened the door to find Emma standing there in a long beige coat, her hair pulled back, lips slightly parted like she'd been rehearsing what to say the entire ride over. Her eyes scanned me, not in anger, not even in nostalgia, but with something closer to uncertainty. Hey, she said, voice quieter than I remembered. Hey. For a second, neither of us moved. Then she gave a small, awkward smile. Can I come in? I stepped aside. The moment she entered, it felt like a ripple passed through the apartment. Her scent, subtle, familiar, drifted in with her. It was like stepping into a memory. Except this time, I wasn't swallowed by it. Emma walked slowly through the space, looking at things like she was taking inventory of what had changed. She paused by the bookshelf, the one she used to mock for being a shrine to authors who hated happy endings. Her voice cut through the silence. It looks the same. It is the same, I replied. Mostly. She turned to face me, hands buried in her coat pockets. How have you been? I gave her a look. You walked out, Emma. Not for a week. Not for a find-yourself retreat. You left, with no plan to come back. You don't get to stroll in and ask how I've been like this as brunch. She nodded. Took it. You're right. I didn't know how to start. Try with the truth. She exhaled slowly, walking to the kitchen counter, fingers running over the edge like she used to when she was nervous. I thought leaving would bring clarity, she said. I thought I'd figure out what was missing, but all I found was more emptiness. You said you needed space. I did, she said quickly. But the space didn't fix anything. It just showed me what I ran from. And I realized it wasn't you. That caught me off guard. She continued. I ran from the version of myself I became. The one who stopped touching you. Stopped listening. I blamed the marriage, but it wasn't the marriage. It was me. I didn't know how to be present anymore. And now you do? She nodded, but it was hesitant. I think so. I hope so. I want to try again. I want to come back. I stared at her, searching for the version of her I used to wake up beside every morning. The woman who laughed at my terrible jokes, who drank black coffee and hated crowded rooms. I couldn't find her. Or maybe I didn't want to. Things have changed, I said carefully. She looked up. You mean her? I didn't answer. You found someone, she said, more to herself than me. Is it serious? I hesitated. It's not casual. Emma's eyes welled slightly, but she blinked it away. Do you love her? I'm not sure what word to put on it yet, I said honestly. But I know what I feel when I'm with her, and it's something I haven't felt in a long time. She looked away, nodding. A long, stretched silence followed. Then she asked, if I hadn't left, would you have fallen for her? I don't know, I said. But I know that when you left, you didn't just create space, you created a void. One you didn't expect anyone else to fill. I thought you'd wait. I did, I said. But eventually, I had to stop waiting and start living again. She took a slow breath. Then tell me now. Be honest. Do you want me back? I didn't answer right away. She stepped closer, just 2 feet away, eyes locked on mine. Please, just tell me. And in that moment, in the absolute quiet of our shared past, I saw it all clearly. Not just her, not just the pain, but Claire's laugh echoing through the room. Her scent still lingering in the pillows. The softness of her hand in mine. The woman who had stepped into the wreckage and helped me rebuild without asking for anything in return. No, I said softly. Emma's face broke slightly. I don't want to go backward, I added. And that's all this would be. You don't love me. You miss the idea of me. Of us. But that version of us is gone. And I don't think we're meant to chase ghosts. She nodded, a tear slipping down her cheek. I'm sorry, I said. So am I. I walked her to the door. She lingered, one last glance over her shoulder at the place she once called home. And then she walked away. Not a slam. Not a goodbye. Just a quiet exit. I stood there for a while, hands still on the doorknob, chest hollow but certain. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't confused. I walked to my phone and typed a message. She came. She left. I'll explain everything. Come over tonight? Claire's reply came just 2 words. I'm here. And somehow I knew. She always had been. She didn't knock this time. Claire used the key I'd given her weeks ago, the one I'd quietly slipped into her hand after dinner one night without a word. She hadn't used it until now. Not once. But tonight, the door opened softly at a little past 8, and she stepped in like she belonged there. Because she did. I was sitting at the kitchen island, the same one we'd circled a dozen times with wine and sarcasm and tension thick enough to cut. But now the air felt lighter. Like something had been released. I looked up. Hey. She set her bag down, studied me for a beat. So. She came. She left. Claire nodded slowly. You told her. Everything. There was a pause. She stepped closer, then leaned against the opposite side of the island. Her voice was calm, but I could hear the fragile thread under it. And I told her no. Claire let out a breath. Part relief, part disbelief. I told her the truth, I added. That going back would be like stepping into someone else's skin. That this is what feels real now. Claire's eyes met mine, and in that moment, all the walls she kept around herself started to fall. Not in some grand, dramatic way, but in the way a body finally unclenches after holding tension too long. You sure about that? She asked, though her voice had softened. I nodded. I didn't choose you by default, Claire. I chose you because in the middle of everything falling apart, you were the only thing that felt steady. She blinked once, then stepped around the island. She was in front of me now, close. I slid my hands around her waist, pulling her in gently. Her fingers traced the edge of my jaw, searching. No more ghosts, she asked. Only the ones I've already buried. She smiled. That slow, knowing smile that had always reached her eyes. Then she leaned in and kissed me, not desperate or questioning, but firm. Sure, the kind of kiss that said this is home now. When we pulled apart, she rested her forehead against mine. So what now? She whispered. I tilted my head toward the bedroom. I was actually thinking we pack a few things. Her brows rose. Oh. I reached for the drawer near the fridge and pulled out the lease, the one I'd been staring at since Emma left that morning. I placed it between us. I don't want to keep living in this in-between, I said. This place? It's full of memories I don't want anymore. Yours is quiet, warm, clean. Feels like a fresh start. Claire looked down at the paper, then back at me. You want to move in with your landlady? I grinned. I was thinking more like moving in with the woman I love. Her breath caught, just slightly. I do, I said before she could ask. I love you. Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. Then let's stop wasting time. She walked to the bedroom and grabbed the first drawer of my nightstand, laughing under her breath. God, you really don't own socks without holes, do you? Hey, I called after her. Don't insult the classics. We spent the next hour packing the essentials, just a few bags. Clothes. The coffee mugs we always used. The photo of us she didn't know I'd printed from a blurry phone shot. One night, when she was laughing at something ridiculous I said. It didn't feel like running. It felt like moving forward. When we finished, she looked around the apartment. The place that had once held every version of me. The man who'd loved and lost. The man who'd broken and hardened. And now, the man who had healed. It's weird, she said. For so long, I was just your landlady. I stepped behind her, arms wrapping around her waist. You were never just anything. She leaned into me. Rent's due, by the way. I kissed her neck. Paid in full. We walked out together, side by side, the door closing behind us for the last time. No ceremony. No dramatic flourish. Just two people choosing something new. And this time, I wasn't the one being left behind. I was the one moving forward, with her.